evolution of vampire literature in the intervening century has seen such an inflation of corpuscle-craving creatures that there seems to be few corners of the globe left without a colony of their own, which makes it all the more surprising that the Croatian Adriatic has received so little attention. Thanks to a growing body of local researchers and writers, however, it seems that the time is ripe for Croatia to regain its rightful place on the European vampire map. Standing at the center of Croatia's vampire heritage is the case of Jure Grando, a 17th century farmer from the inland Istrian village of Gringa. An account of Grando's beyond the grave antics were published by the Slovene geographer Janez Vashgard Velvesar in 1689, the first documented reference to a case of vampirism in European history. A huddle of stone houses squatting amidst lush green fields. Gringa nowadays, the peacefully rustic kind of place normally associated with farmhouse conversions, holiday rentals, and cozy village inns. However, Jure Grando has not been totally forgotten. Cafe Bar Vampire in the center of Gringa pays somewhat restrained tribute to the village's most famous son, and the village graveyard receives a steady trickle of visitors. Although Grando's final resting place remains unmarked, Velvesar visited Gringa only a few years after the Grando case and clearly spoke with villagers who remembered it well. According to Velvesar, Jure Grando died in 1656 and spent the next 16 years rising nocturnally from his grave, terrorizing locals and sharing the bed of his widow. Taking matters into their own hands, 9 courageous locals dug up Grando's body, drove a stake through his heart, and chopped off his still smiling head. The case contains all the archetypal ingredients that make up the modern vampire. young ages. The legend tells us that for 16 years after his death, Jure would arise from his grave by night and terrorize the village. The village priest, Giorgio, who had buried Jure 16 years previously, discovered that at night somebody would knock on the doors around the village, and on whichever door he knocked, someone from that house would die within the next few days. Jure also appeared to his terrified widow in her bedroom, who described the corpse as looking as though he was smiling and gasping for breath. Okay, everyone, we're going rogue. My computer fan is crazy. I had to unhook my Yeti from its mount so that you don't have to listen to that. I'm sure you can still hear it a little bit, but hopefully this is a little bit better. The bravest of the villagers, led by the perfect Miho Radatic, chased and tried to kill the vampire by piercing his heart with a hawthorn stick, but failed because the stick just bounced off of his chest. One night later, 9 people went to the graveyard carrying a cross, lamps, and a hawthorn stick. They dug up Jure's coffin and found a perfectly preserved corpse with a smile wrote that every churchyard we pass is haunted by the ghostly creations of Slavonic and Oriental fantasy. It was only the publication of Bram Stoker's Dracula and Transylvania that became the newly imagined homeland of the lusty nocturnal demon, and the Adriatic's role in the story was largely forgotten. Forgotten, that is, in the rest of the world. Croatian folklorists never stopped researching popular tales of the supernatural, building up a large body of scholarship on the subject. It is the northern Adriatic regions of Istria and the Kvarner Gulf that have preserved most in the way of vampiric lore. Central to Istria's supernatural bestiary is the Strigoon, a creature that lives among humans by day and turns into a demon at night, bearing illness and death. In Valvassar's account of the Grando case, the men of Kringa send for someone from the nearby village of Leboglav to help them with their vampire problems. Boris Perrig explains this is probably a reference to a Kersnik. A Kersnik is a member of the community, a bit like a shaman whose supernatural gift is passed from generation to generation. They still exist in small numbers. It's not difficult to see the Kersnik of Istrian folklore as kind of a prototype for Dr. Van Helsing, the vampire hunting character common to modern literature. Jure Grando isn't the only local historical figure to have exerted an influence on vampire fiction. The 15th century Queen of Hungary, Barbara of Selj, had a reputation for cruelty and was known as the Black Queen of Zagreb. As a result, according to Perrig, Barbara may well have been influenced by the author J. Sheridan Le Fanu, who published Carmilla in 1872. An outbreak of tuberculosis in a village near Verastin led to a legend that Barbara had risen from her grave to drink people's blood. Have the best day or night that you can wherever you are.